Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Surya Prakash Upadhyay from IIT Mandi. Today we are going to talk on module Urban Decentralization or Municipal Arrangements from paper Sociology of Urban Transformations. So students, let us see what we are going to learn in this module. So this module aims to introduce themes of urban decentralization in India and its changing contours in an era of globalization. In the larger context of globalization, the retreat of the state from traditional functions and greater involvement of non-state actors like market players and civil society organizations, good governance and citizens' participation are also discussed in this module. It provides an overview of the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act 1992 and the Industrial Township exception therein. Certain words you might have heard regularly, such as good governance, participatory governance, decentralization, power delegation, financial inclusion, and these have become a kind of buzzword in the recent past. What do these terms indicate to? How are they employed? What mechanisms or instruments are used to translate these ideas in actual practice? And lastly, in actual, how do these terms unfold? Therefore, in this module, we discuss urban decentralization and municipal arrangements in India. The aim of this module is to understand decentralization in the larger context of globalization, the retreat of the state from traditional functions, the greater involvement of non-state actors like market players and civil society organizations, good governance and citizens' participation. In the globalized scenario, the state is transforming itself. It can legitimately transfer power or sanction new powers above it through arrangements between states to establish and abide the norms of the international government. At the other end, it can allow constitutional ordering within its own territory in respect of the relationship of power and authority between different levels of government and civil society, which is best described as localization. Turner and Hume consider delegation of tasks to non-actors, or rather to non-state actors like non-government organizations, as a form of decentralization. Decentralization is essentially a process taking place within the state with either administrative or political overtones, and involvement of other organizations could come under the banner of public-private partnership. Decentralization is often seen as a virtue and advocated by many. Neera Chandok, for instance, offers the pluralization of state theory. She explains that pluralization replaces the bureaucratic, hierarchical and overloaded structures of decision-making with a multiplicity of agencies that can respond immediately and efficiently to problems. For instance, institutional innovations like public-private partnerships could be an example of pluralization of the state. Further, the decline of the state is accompanied by increasing attention towards civil society institutions, by which organized interests seek to influence and engage with state institutions. This vision of decentralized, people-centric governance resonates with those that have happened globally, specifically locates the emergence of the concept of decentralized urban governance in the 1990s, following the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro and the 1996 Habitat II conference in Istanbul. This was a time when local government faced a movement towards fragmentation and more differentiated forms of governance, that is, local government became urban governance. The impetus for such changes came from financial restrictions on lower levels of government, especially in the European countries. Local governments, in turn, responded by contracting out services to private producers, devolving responsibilities to the voluntary sector, and developing basis of internal competition directed more towards the efficient use of restricted financial resources. So, having discussed some of the aspects of decentralization and good governance, so let us see what is the constitutional framework of decentralization in India, in urban India. According to the Constitution of India, urban development is the responsibility of the second-tier state level. Therefore, the central government can issue directives on urban matters, but it does not have the power to legislate. Only state governments in India have the power to legislate on urban development. Despite being state subject, it was the central government in New Delhi that initiated and supported most of the urban development programs, especially under the 5-year plans. The 74th Constitutional Amendment Act 1992 conferred constitutional status on urban local bodies, such as municipalities, which were provided with elected councils and constituted the third tier of government, other two being the central government and the government of each state of the union. This act also allowed for participation of women and weaker sections of society through reservation of seats, because 1/3 for women and for the scheduled caste and tribes in proportion to their demographic weight in the population of the corresponding constituency is reserved for these groups, and is also transferred to the urban local bodies the responsibility for urban development, and that is in particular of providing urban infrastructure and services and mobilizing the required financial resources through taxes, levying of users' costs, and attracting of private national and foreign investments. Article 343, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act has stipulated the criteria for 3 types of urban local bodies. They are municipal corporation for larger urban area, such as Mumbai, municipal councils for smaller urban areas, such as Lucknow, Nagar Panchayat for an area in transition from rural to urban. It lists 5 criteria for constituting urban local bodies, namely the population of the area, the density of the population therein, the revenue generated for local administration, the percentage of employment in non-agricultural activities, and the economic importance. For the first time, the more comprehensive parameters were laid down for declaration of municipal areas. However, specific quantitative criteria were not specified in the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act for larger urban area and smaller urban area. Let us see some of the aspects of decentralization and participatory governance at the ward committees through the angle of ward committees and area sabhas. To allow the citizens proximity and participation in governance, the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act provided for the formation of ward committees. These were committees at the level of municipal constituencies consisting of elected representatives, municipal officers, and representatives from civil society organizations to deal with local issues. Nanan and Board note that the functions and powers allotted to the ward committees have led to changes in power in the urban local bodies between the executive wing headed by the municipal commissioner and the deliberative wing headed by the mayor. Ward committees give councillors more authority over the ward officers who represent the executive wing, while respect to planning and implementation of larger works in the ward area, ward committees can play out an advisory role. Shiva Ramakrishnan points out that only in states like Kerala and West Bengal have ward committees been functioning in a participatory manner for over a decade. In other states of India, ward committees have hardly been formed, and where they exist, they are usually large and formed by clubbing together many wards, which ultimately defeats the purpose of proximity to citizens. Ward committees are institutionalized mechanisms for meaningful interaction between citizens, councillors, and ward personnel for redressing grievances and promoting good governance at the local level. They also provide spaces for citizen and civil society organization participation. However, in practice, it is the municipal councillors who have used these spaces to access the urban local body in a situation when they fail to win municipal elections. Moreover, civil society participation in the ward committees is narrowly defined, as civil society organizations can be nominated as members of the ward committees to put forward proposals and suggestions, but not permitted to vote. It is the municipal councillors who nominate civil society organization members. Therefore, here also nepotism prevails. In a situation where civil society organizations are either unable to enter the urban local body through the ward committees or choose to disregard them, forging partnerships with the executive wing of the urban local body serves as a viable alternative. Through the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, that is called JNNURM, the Ministry of Urban Development in New Delhi has directed state governments across urban India to enact a community participation law as a mandatory reform in urban governance. The ministry has also drafted a model law as a guideline. The Model Community Participation Law introduces the concept of the Area Sabha, defined as the body of all persons registered in the electoral rolls pertaining to every polling booth in the area in a municipality. Area Sabha is a micro unit which consists of the electoral part of the electoral roll, which consists of 1,200 enlisted voters. These voters elect the Area Sabha representatives, and 35 of such representatives form a ward committee under the chairmanship of the municipal councillor of that ward. Election of the Area Sabha representatives can take place along with the municipal elections. This way, the councillor becomes accountable to the people of the area. These 35 representatives form a permanent body called the Area Sabha Samiti, which will hold monthly meetings where all residents of the area can attend, discuss problems, pass resolutions, and decide budget allocations of the area. Thus, power vests on the people. Though decentralization in India is provided within the constitutional framework, but the citizen activism, community-based partnerships, citizens' participatory initiatives are varied ways in which decentralized attempts of service or service provision and development goals are carried forward. Many of these initiatives advocate efficiency and good governance and influence policy changes through such decentralized efforts. NGOs, community-based organizations, and resident welfare associations are forerunners in such efforts. Civil society organizations are regarded as important participants in these emerging forms of urban governance, such as via partnerships. The World Bank have advocated for citizen representation among users of public services and as clients or members of NGOs and voluntary associations. John Harris argues, especially with reference to India, that governance in the context of liberalization is the idea of the desirability of partnership both between government and the private sector and government and citizens. The emergence of such parallel structures of decentralization involving civil society organizations can be seen against the backdrop of three interlinked forces in the context of urban India. The first force is the policies of economic liberalization that were set in motion in 1991. The second force is good governance discourses that have been championed most ardently by international agencies, namely the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The third force is the urban reforms that were initiated by the Government of India in New Delhi through the programs such as JNNURM. So these three forces have independently or conjointly led to changes in urban local governance across India, and these are variously described, such as public sector restructuring in accordance with the standards of the new public management, wherein private sector participation and the rise of new forms of service provisions based on multi-stakeholder arrangements, or the depoliticization and commercializing of the functions of the institutions of governance, avoiding political interference and promoting greater efficiency. Similarly, it is also being seen as the promotion of a corporate-led economy or a market-based reform or a new managerialism in local governance. Kennedy notes that the outcomes of India's new policy regime are not only the product of impersonal market forces, but they are also the result of endogenous political strategies acting in conjugation with the territorial reorganization of economic activities at various scales, ranging from local to global. In contemporary India, there are many examples of decentralized participatory experiments that claim to have brought the citizen and government closer and more responsive. For example, the Bhagidari initiative in Delhi, Proof in Bangalore, Advanced Locality Management, that is ALM groups in Mumbai, elite citizens groups like the Bangalore Action Task Force in Bangalore and Citizens Roundtable in Mumbai also have implications on the questions of inclusion and accountability. In this section, we discuss the Advanced Locality Management Partnership of Mumbai and the Bhagidari Partnership of Delhi. The ALM model in Delhi, for instance, was first experienced in 1996 through a pilot project in residential colony of Joshi Lane in Ghatkopar East. That is a kind of a suburb in Mumbai. And ALM is an identified area or locality whose residents and users have committed to improve the quality of life in close cooperation with the municipal authority of Mumbai. An ALM covers a neighborhood or a street with about 1,000 citizens and is registered at the local municipal ward office, which appoints a nodal officer to attend to citizen complaints. Most of the prominent ALMs in Mumbai have guaranteed to larger issues like the branding of localities, as in Malabar Hills, or the holding of festivals, as in Chembur and Bandra, and the formation of larger federations like the Juhu Citizens Welfare Group and the Malabar Hills Residents Association, in order to gain more visibility. The government of Delhi initiated the Bhagidari, that is, citizen government partnership in 2000 between government agencies in the National Capital Territory, like the Jal Board and the Vidyut Board, and neighborhood associations, that is the RWAs, the Resident Welfare Associations, Senior Citizen Association, or Market Traders Associations, in order to develop some kind of citizen government interface in the management of local affairs. It was envisaged that by consulting these organizations on specific schemes and by promoting their interaction with municipal or officials concerning the maintenance of civic infrastructure, and by entitling them to a role of supervision of local works, the local government would become more responsive to the needs and views of the people. The Bhagidari scheme ensured its own visibility through regular announcements in the press. Harris describes how the Bhagidari partnerships of RWAs have gained prominence mainly in planned colonies and other higher income areas and not in slum clusters and other poor parts of the city. These groups are involved in such tasks as securing payment and collection of water bills, electricity meter reading, house tax collection, the supervision of sanitation services, and the maintenance of community parks and community halls. However, Harris questions whether the scheme really does represent partnership or whether it rather involves the offloading of tasks by city government onto local associations. So in an assessment of the partnership, Lama Reval pointed out that the Bhagidari allowed the RWAs to gain more visibility. Through these initiatives, the RWAs popularized issues like rainwater harvesting, problems of civic administration like solid waste management, pollution, house tax disputes, and redressal. A system of awards was also instituted for RWAs for achievement in the above said things. However, the Bhagidari could not cover the slum areas of Delhi, and it also failed to get the active participation of municipal councillors. So what are the implications of this kind of participations and inclusion in a democratic setup? So by now, what we have discussed till now, it is quite clear that decentralization is valorized because it brings governance closer and makes it more responsive to the people and even aims at their participation. This has been time and again proclaimed, whether as part of the good governance, participatory governance, or the decentralization discourse. To that end, several decentralized participatory civil society partnerships have already been taking place both globally and in India. Some of these initiatives have been discussed in the last section. So in this section, the discussion revolves on the deeper implications that such efforts have on the questions of participation and inclusion, and these are the cherished goals of decentralization. It is necessary to articulate in the beginning what participation and exclusion mean for the purpose of this module. The term participation, widely used in development discourses since the early 1970s, is interpreted in various ways and according to its uses in particular contexts. Authors like Cook and Kothari even emphasizing this as the tyranny of participation. For the purpose of this module, the term participation is essentially understood as how ordinary people gain political agency, and something which was described by Cornwell and Brock. Also, the varied and the contested ways in which participation is practiced in real life situations. Using examples of decentralization, this module just explains how participation unfolds in the urban context in India. The term exclusion also have varied meanings depending on its usage in specific contexts. In this module, the word exclusion is used both in the political and sociological sense. In particular, it describes the political exclusion of lower socio-economic city residents, like slum dwellers and street vendors, from the decentralized units of governance created by decentralized initiatives like ALMs and Bhagidari. This political exclusion is in turn linked to the sociological variable of class and that of status that derives from class. These sociological variables distinguish middle class and elite citizens who spearhead such associations from lower socio-economic city residents. In the process of forming partnerships with the executive wing of the municipal authority, citizen groups and civil society organizations often bypass elected representatives. The work of many of the civil society organizations and attendant discourses have implications for the goals of decentralization as envisaged in the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. ALMs and elite resident welfare associations, that is called RWA, in cities like Bangalore and Delhi have claimed that the municipal councillors are apathetic to the citizens' needs and have alienated their constituents. The RWAs, therefore, have hardly interacted with elected representatives and instead have relied heavily on their interactions with the ward officers of the municipal authority. In the process of partnering with the executive wing, these associations have bypassed elected representatives and undermined their legitimacy. In Bangalore and Hyderabad, citizen initiatives and partnerships have excluded elected representatives. And for the Bhagidari partnership in Delhi, administrative efficiency preceding electoral accountability defeats the goals of strengthening local self-governance as envisaged in the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, as one of the goals of the amendment has clearly been to vest more power with the elected representatives or municipal councillors who represent the people of the locality. Binti Singh and Parsatharthi note that autonomous citizen bodies like those in the City Roundtable, the Mumbai Task Force and the Road Monitoring Committee in Mumbai all hinder rather than facilitate the goals of democratic decentralization and undermine the power of municipal authority by ignoring their views. So let us take some of the cases from industrial townships to understand the privatization of municipal functions. So another way by which the provision of key infrastructure, security and spatial planning functions outside the rubric of local and regional governments is through what authors call corporate urbanism in India, which means settlements developed by the corporate sector, often as part of concomitant industrial activity. In her analysis, Sood explains that the legislative foundation for these new forms of corporate urbanism lies in the constitutional provision of industrial township, incorporated as an exception to the representative municipal framework, envisaged under the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. Urban development through industrial townships like special economic zones, that is SEZs, and the National Investment and Manufacturing Zones, that is NIMZ, has provided the scope for privatization of municipal functions. Key functions of local governments, namely executive and representative functions, infrastructure and services provision, urban planning, and security, have been entrusted to public players in the case of SEZs in India. Asima Sood cites the examples of states such as West Bengal, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Jharkhand, and these states have adopted the industrial township exception in their own municipal acts and SEZ framework. The Jharkhand Municipal Act 2011, for example, gives the state government wide leverage in prescribing the industrial township authorities' functions. States such as Karnataka have gone the furthest in some ways in providing procedural gloss to the industrial township. with functions ranging from birth and death registration to broader infrastructure provision. Similarly, Roy explains that such zones are created by exempting areas for rapid growth and infrastructure investments from the master plan in force. She cites the examples of Buddha Purnima Project Authority, Cyberabad Development Authority, the Hyderabad Airport Development Authority from Hyderabad. Each of these was once a parcel of urban territory subject to the planning vision of the Hyderabad Urban Development Authority. Once exempted from the master plan in force, the special development zones are brought under the discretionary powers of the executive with no framework to regulate them. Each of these special development zones may become thriving hubs of commercial growth because decision making at the highest level is quick and favorable to new investments. Similar to the examples of ALM and Bhagidari partnerships described earlier, corporate urbanism encouraged through SEZs also have serious implications on electoral representation. In the industrial township model, as Sood explains, non-representative governance mechanisms enabled by the constitutional provision and its state adoptions run against the spirit of the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, which has otherwise attempted to introduce more democratic forms of governance. So, students, let us summarize what we have learned in this module. In India, the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act 1992 provided the constitutional framework for urban decentralization. Decentralization is also valorized within the good governance discourse, pluralization of state theory, market reforms, and privatization of urban infrastructure and service provision. The idea is to make municipal authorities self-reliant so that they are able to generate revenue. Citizens' partnership initiatives in decentralized governance like the ALMs in Mumbai and the Bhagidari in Delhi are outside the parameters of the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. And many of these initiatives which bypass elected representatives are exclusionary in their operations and thereby go against the letter and spirit of democratic decentralization as envisaged in the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. Thank you.